The Great Barrier Reef has always been Australia's treasure, and not just beautiful, also bountiful. It's worth billions in tourism revenue. But now the largest living structure on the planet is becoming the largest dying structure. Vast amounts of coral is being killed off by rising ocean temperatures. One scientist, Dr. Charlie Veron, has been warning of this looming catastrophe for years, but few have listened. However, as Tom Steinfort reports, now that it's probably too late to do anything about this disaster, the world is finally taking notice.
A trip out to the Great Barrier Reef used to be a source of joy for the man they call the godfather of coral, Dr. Charlie Veron.
You thought the reef was indestructible?
I thought the reef was indestructible, that nothing was ever going to happen to it, it would never change. It was here forever. And, of course, I don't think that anymore.
Quite the opposite now.
It's quite the opposite. It's changed almost beyond recognition in my lifetime. And I think the race is on as to who dies first, me or the reef. And it's horrible for me to say that.
What's more likely at this stage?
I'm in good health. The reef isn't.
Charlie has brought me here to Pixie Reef, an ironic name for a place that's in such a sorry state. All around us is bleached and dying coral, right in the heart of the Great Barrier Reef. When the seawater gets too hot, coral goes into a state of toxic shock, expelling the algae that normally gives it its spectacular colour.
As someone that's had so much to do with this, I mean, more than half a century you've been coming out here, how do you feel?
Oh, it's horrible. It's devastating. I never dreamt this would happen. Until about 20 years ago, when I started dreaming, having nightmares. The nightmares are now all coming true.
It's reality.
It's reality. It's not prophecy anymore. It's not what scientists say anymore. It's reality. Anyone can see it. This is real. There are about 340 species of coral on the Great Barrier Reef.
Charlie Veron was Australia's first full-time reef scientist. He went on to name over 20% of the world's coral species.
First time you got out on the reef, what did you think when you saw it?
I was absolutely gobsmacked. I thought it was the most fabulous place I'd ever been to in my life. And I just felt that this was a place that I'd never seen the likes of before. There was so much life. And I thought, it can't get better than this.
Now, though, it can't get much worse. A mass bleaching event for the second year in a row, something that's never happened before.
It's pretty disconcerting, but it's actually warmer in the water here than it is out of it. The sea temperature in these parts at the moment is about 31 degrees, which is 3 degrees above the long-term average, and that's exactly what is causing this bleaching catastrophe. And the best way to think of bleaching is almost a little bit like a bushfire, in that if you have one round of it, the coral is capable of rejuvenating itself. But if you have 2 in consecutive years, well, that's when you're in real trouble. And that's exactly what is happening on the reef right now.
So last year, along a 700-kilometre stretch of the furthest north section of the Barrier Reef, we lost 2/3 of the corals.
When you say we lost them, as in
They
dead,
died.
never coming back.
That's right. Once they're dead, they're dead.
Professor Terry Hughes from James Cook University is in charge of the emergency aerial assessment of this latest bleaching crisis. It's a monumental task. The Great Barrier Reef is 2,300 kilometres long. That's bigger than Italy. And the results from this week's survey, well, they're grim.
Between Townsville and Cairns today, we were measuring most reefs in our highest bleaching category, which is greater than 80% bleaching. That's 80% of the corals on each reef were white.
What percentage of the reefs have some sort of bleaching?
100.
Every single reef has
Every
bleaching.
reef we flew over today between Townsville and Cairns had some degree of bleaching.
Just on a personal perspective, how do you feel seeing it all?
Flying over it today, it broke my heart.
Last year, 93% of the Great Barrier Reef was bleached. The worst affected area was the most pristine, the section of reef to the north of Port Douglas. This year, the worst bleaching is right in the middle, between Cairns and Townsville, the very heart of the massive tourism industry.
Right now, for the tourism industry, this is a bloody disaster. We take about 2.5 million people a year out to the reef. We employ 63,000 people in the catchment of the Great Barrier Reef. The industry is worth $6.4 billion a year based on 2012 figures.
Cole McKenzie is the spokesperson for the reef's tour operators. Without a healthy barrier reef, the tourism industry will collapse. So now it's time for blunt talk and desperate measures.
I do believe there are things that we can do. One of the things we haven't really gone with right now is the idea of looking at refuge areas on the Great Barrier Reef. Let's get out there and pump some cold water from the bottom to the surface and cool down some of the reefs that we know we can do it. We already have that technology.
In effect, summing that up, pick a few reefs and save them.
Pick a few reefs and save them, and we should be picking the reefs that can act as a seed bank for us in the future. But if we'd have just had one cyclone in the last 12 months, we wouldn't be having this bleaching event either.
It's a strange state of affairs when you're hoping for a cyclone to save your ecosystem, isn't it?
Well, it is.
The cyclonic rains cool the ocean temperature, giving the corals a chance to recover. But casting a shadow over all this beauty is climate change and the amount of carbon dioxide being pumped into the atmosphere, fueling the rise in air and sea temperatures.
It's happened in the past. The carbon dioxide is built up over thousands of years from an immense amount of volcanic activity that we don't see on the Earth now. But in those thousands of years, the corals have gradually evolved to adapt to a higher temperature. We're doing this in a few decades, and there's going to be no adaptation in a few decades. These corals have not adapted to anything. They just get wiped out. And so we are entering one of those bust cycles, but they're not cycles. They're not created by nature. They're created by us. It's something completely unprecedented, and it's happening faster than it's ever happened before, ever.
What do you think it'll take to shock people into realising we've got a crisis on our hands?
We showed from our data from last year's bleaching event that the severity of bleaching on a reef was entirely due to the amount of heat that it was exposed to. There was no protective effect of water quality. There was no protective effect of reef zoning. The hot water intrudes regardless of dotted lines on a map. So we can't locally manage the severity of bleaching through water quality programs or reef zoning, marine parks. We actually have to deal with the elephant in the room, and that's carbon emissions and global warming.
It's really severely bleached there now, well over 50%. All the whitish looking areas are bleached coral. None of that's a natural colour. So no reef ever looks like that.
Is it so bad that you hope that it almost shocks people into action?
Well, I hope it shocks people into action because it's sure shocking me.
But the reality is that politicians aren't listening. There's both federal and state government support for a massive expansion of the coal mining industry in Queensland. If this goes ahead, billions of extra tonnes of carbon dioxide will be released into the atmosphere each year through the burning of coal for electricity.
Why do you think so many people don't care?
Best explanation I have ever come across is that people, humans, tend to respond to the here and now. If someone is going to invade your house, well, you got to defend it. You got to defend your family. But the further away that threat is, the less you care about it.
But this is here and now, isn't it? We've just seen it.
It is here and now. The war's on. It really is on, and it is that serious. It is on full swing.
But we're losing the war, aren't we?
Oh, we're going to lose the war, yeah. We're not doing anything about it.
Dr. Charlie Veron knows every single coral here by name. And for decades, he's been warning that all this was at risk. There have now been 4 mass bleaching events in just 19 years, and crucially, these last 2 are back-to-back, which is unprecedented and Charlie believes simply unsustainable.
Coral reefs are home to something between 1/3 and 1/4 of all marine species at some stage in their life cycle. So you wipe out coral reefs and you're going to cause an ecological collapse of the oceans. It's like seeing a house slowly burning down and you see the pictures you have loved all your life catching fire, being consumed.
Can you put the fire out?
The fire out. And no one's coming to the fire. And a lot of people say, oh, it's just a normal, natural thing. There's nothing normal, natural about this. 20 years ago, this would have been a fabulous place. It was a fabulous place. It was just teeming with life. And now it's teeming with death.